The cattle car screeched to a sudden halt after 3 days of rattling along, and Captain Elsa Schmidt pressed her face against the tiny barred window, straining to see where they'd ended up. Around her, 47 other German military women stirred nervously in the tight space, their uniforms grimy and their faces pale with exhaustion. "Where are we now?" murmured Private Lena Braun, a radio operator captured during the fall of the Western Front. Through the window, Elsa spotted tall guard towers and barbed wire fences. But something felt off compared to the prison camps Nazi propaganda had described. The buildings looked solid and well-kept, not the rickety wooden shacks she'd imagined. "It's an American prison camp," Elsa said grimly. "Get ready for what we've been told to expect." The propaganda had painted a clear picture. American captors would starve German prisoners, interrogate them harshly, and humiliate them to crush their spirits. As female auxiliaries, they'd been warned that capture by Americans meant a slow, cruel death. The heavy doors of the cattle car slid open with a loud scrape, and American soldiers appeared outside. Elsa braced herself for shouting and roughness, but what she heard threw her off completely. "Ladies, please step down carefully. The platform's slippery," said a tall American sergeant, offering his hand to help the German women off the train. His uniform was neat, his manner calm, and most shockingly, he spoke clear German with genuine care for their safety. "I'm Sergeant Carter," he announced to the gathered prisoners. "You're now at Camp Jackson in Mississippi. You'll be processed, given rooms, and told about camp rules." Elsa glanced at Lena. This wasn't the harsh treatment they'd been taught to fear. The American guards were armed but calm, their weapons lowered, treating the German women more like lost travelers than fierce enemies. "Sergeant Carter," Elsa said in careful English, "what's going to happen to us?" The American seemed surprised by her question. "Ma'am, you'll be housed following Geneva Convention rules, given enough food and medical care, and offered work and activities until the war ends and you can go home." "But we're German soldiers," Lena said through Elsa's translation. "Your enemies?" Sergeant Carter nodded seriously. "Yes, ma'am. You were our enemies in the war, but now you're prisoners of war, and you have rights under international law that we have to follow." As they marched toward the camp entrance, Elsa noticed things that didn't match what she'd been told about American camps. The grounds were tidy and well-kept. Guards walked casually, not aggressively. Most surprising, she heard voices from inside the camp. German voices chatting normally, not crying out in fear. "This feels strange," Lena whispered. "Where's the cruelty we were warned about?" Before Elsa could answer, they passed through the main gate and saw something that stopped every German woman in her tracks. In the camp courtyard, German prisoners were playing soccer while American guards watched with mild interest. The prisoners looked healthy, their uniforms clean, their faces relaxed, not terrified. "My goodness," whispered Corporal Marie, a signals expert from Bavaria. "They look normal, like regular people." Sergeant Carter noticed their shock. "Ladies, I know this might not be what you expected, but Camp Jackson follows American military rules and international law. Your safety and care are our duty." As they neared the processing building, Elsa felt her beliefs start to waver. Everything the Nazi regime had taught them about American cruelty toward prisoners was being proven wrong by what she saw. But the biggest surprise was still ahead. Nothing could have prepared these German women for what they'd find inside the camp facilities. Before we reveal what these German prisoners faced in their first hours at Camp Jackson, tell us where you're watching from today. We love hearing from our global community who share our curiosity about these amazing, untold stories of kindness during wartime. Inside the processing building, Elsa and her fellow prisoners faced their first real test of American intentions. They were led to a large room where several American military staff, including a female officer, waited behind desks piled with papers and supplies. "I am Captain Sarah Jenkins," announced the American woman in clear German. "I will be your main contact during your stay at Camp Jackson. Each of you will be interviewed one by one to check your identity, rank, and any special health needs." Elsa was called first, her legs shaking as she walked to Captain Jenkins's desk. Every Nazi training had warned that American questioning would use mind tricks to break German will. "Please sit," Captain Jenkins said kindly, pointing to a wooden chair. "Would you like some water? You've had a long trip." The offer of a drink surprised Elsa completely. "Yes, thank you." An American soldier brought her a clean glass of cold water, and Elsa drank it thankfully while Captain Jenkins looked over her papers with quick skill. Lieutenant Elsa Schmidt, Communications Corps, captured near Aachen on March 15th. Is this right? Yes, Elsa answered carefully. Any injuries or health issues we should know about? No, Captain. Good. Now, I need to tell you about your rights as a prisoner of war under the Geneva Convention. For the next 10 minutes, Captain Jenkins explained in detail the protections for prisoners of war. Enough food, medical care, letter writing rights, fun activities, and safety from harm. Most amazing, she gave Elsa a printed copy of these rights in German. You'll stay in Barracks 7 with 15 other German military women. Meals are served 3 times a day in the main dining hall. Male privileges start after your 2-week quarantine period. Quarantine? Elsa asked worriedly. Standard health check for all new arrivals. We want to make sure you're healthy and not carrying any sicknesses. During quarantine, you'll learn about camp rules and use fun areas. As Elsa was led from the processing room, she passed Lena, who was going in for her interview. They're treating us like people, Elsa whispered in wonder. The walk to Barracks 7 showed more surprises. They passed a library where German prisoners were reading books and newspapers, a medical clinic where American doctors were helping German patients. Most shocking of all, a canteen where prisoners could buy small treats with tokens earned in camp. This can't be, whispered Sergeant Lena Braun as they reached their assigned barracks. This goes against everything we were taught about American meanness. The barracks itself was another eye-opener. Clean wooden buildings with real beds, mattresses, and blankets, windows with glass panes instead of bars, personal lockers for belongings. The space was plain but proper, more like army rooms than jail cells. "Ladies," called an American corporal, "you'll find basic soap items and clean clothes in your lockers. Dinner is at 1800 hours in the main hall. Tomorrow morning, you'll start orientation with other German staff." After the Americans left, the German women checked their quarters in quiet shock. Each bed had clean sheets, a pillow, and warm blankets. The lockers held soap, toothbrushes, towels, and fresh underwear. "Lena," Elsa called softly, "look at this." She had found something that changed her ideas about prison camps completely. At the end of the barracks was a shared washroom with private shower stalls, mirrors, and most incredibly, hot running water. "Hot water," Lena whispered in surprise. "In a prison camp?" Corporal Sophie turned on one of the faucets, and steam rose right away from the sink. "Not just warm, really hot." "When did you last have a hot bath, Elsa?" Elsa couldn't remember. In the last months of the war, even German army places had no good heat or hot water. The thought that American prison camps gave such nice things to enemy prisoners seemed unreal. "There are clean towels," noted another prisoner, touching the soft cloth in wonder. "And real soap, not the fake stuff we've used for months." As evening came and the German women got ready for their first meal as American prisoners, Elsa had a worrying thought. Everything the Nazi regime had taught them about American treatment of prisoners was turning out to be wrong. If they had lied about this, what else was just made-up stories instead of facts? "Elsa," Lena said quietly as they walked to the dining hall, "what if we've been wrong about everything?" The question would stay with Elsa in the weeks ahead as she learned how different American life was from Nazi lies. The dining hall at Camp Jackson broke every idea Elsa had about prisoner care. Long tables full of German POWs eating from real plates with metal forks and spoons, talking normally while American guards watched from a polite distance. "Form a line here, ladies," directed an American cook, a nice man in his 50s who spoke simple German. "We have pot roast tonight with veggies and bread." Elsa took her tray and watched in wonder as the cook scooped big helpings of meat, potatoes, carrots, and green beans onto her plate. The bread was soft and fresh, the coffee real, not the fake substitutes Elsa had gotten used to in the war's final months. "This is more food than I've seen in ages," whispered Lena as they sat at a table with other German military women who'd been at the camp longer. "You'll get used to it," said Corporal Hauser, a radio expert captured 3 months earlier. "They give us the same food as American soldiers. 3 meals a day, plus canteen access for extra stuff." "But why?" asked Sergeant Lena Braun. "We're prisoners, enemy soldiers." Hauser gave a small smile. "That's what we all wondered. The Americans say you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. They think happy prisoners cause less trouble and share better information." "Information?" Elsa's voice grew sharp. "Nothing disloyal," Hauser said quickly. "Just basic stuff about German army setup, equipment, things they can check elsewhere. In return, they give us extra privileges beyond Geneva Convention rules." As they ate, Elsa watched how American guards and German prisoners acted. The guards stayed watchful but not mean, keeping a polite distance while letting prisoners talk freely. "Corporal Hauser," Elsa said carefully, "have you faced any cruelty? Any attempts to force or punish you?" "The opposite. Last month, I got sick with a lung infection. They took me to the camp hospital right away, gave me the same care as American soldiers, and let me heal fully before coming back." Lena leaned in. "What about questioning? Pressure to spill military secrets? They asked us once for basic details. Name, rank, unit, how we were caught. Nothing more than Geneva Convention rules. No pushing, no threats, no punishment for staying quiet. After dinner, the German prisoners got free time." Elsa watched in amazement as her fellow POWs played cards, read books from the camp library, and even joined organized sports. The place felt more like a military base than a prison. "Captain Schmidt," called an American voice behind her. She turned to see Sergeant Carter with a clipboard. "Yes, Sergeant. Tomorrow you'll start orientation with Lieutenant Emily Brooks, our camp education officer. She'll explain work tasks, activity programs, and letter writing rules. We offer English classes, job training, and school courses. Many German prisoners learn new skills here for jobs after the war." That night, as Elsa settled into clean sheets with hot water for washing, she faced a deep inner struggle. Everything she'd been taught about American cruelty was being proven wrong every day. "Lena," she said softly as they got into their beds, "what if the Americans aren't the monsters we were told they are? Then what does that mean about everything else we believed?" The question lingered as Elsa tried to sleep. If American treatment of prisoners was kind, not cruel, if their guards were professional, not brutal, if their camps gave dignity, not shame, what else had Nazi propaganda lied about? Outside the barracks, she heard German voices chatting normally, the calm footsteps of guards on patrol, and the peaceful feel of a well-run place. For the first time since her capture, Elsa felt something unexpected as a prisoner of war, safe. But with that safety came troubling thoughts about the regime she'd served and the war she'd fought. 2 weeks into her captivity, Elsa faced her toughest moment when Lieutenant Emily Brooks, the American education officer, made an offer that forced her to question everything she'd believed about the war. "Captain Schmidt, your English is strong, and your communication skills are great," Brooks said during their morning meeting. "I'd like to offer you a job helping with camp administration, translating papers, assisting with prisoner orientation, and aiding communication between American staff and German prisoners." Elsa's stomach tightened. "You want me to work with American forces? I want you to help make sure your fellow prisoners are treated well and know their rights. This isn't working against Germany. It's helping German prisoners," Lieutenant Emily Brooks said. The difference troubled Elsa deeply. Nazi training had drilled into her that any help to the enemy was treason, no matter the reason. What would the job involve? Translating camp rules, medical forms, and letter-writing guidelines, helping new prisoners understand American ways, and acting as a go-between for German prisoners and camp staff when problems come up. Lieutenant Brooks paused, watching Elsa's face. "I should add, this job comes with extra benefits. Your own room, more library access, and more letters home. And if I say no, you stay a regular prisoner with all Geneva Convention rights. No punishment, no hard feelings. It's a choice, not a must." That night, Elsa talked it over with Lena and other German prisoners she trusted. "It's a trick," insisted Sergeant Lena Braun. "They want to make you a collaborator. then use you to spy on other prisoners. But Lena, Elsa replied, look around. They're treating us better than our own army did in the last months. Maybe they really want to make things better. Corporal Hauser shared another view. I've watched the Americans for months. They stick to rules, treat prisoners with respect, and seem serious about Geneva Convention standards. That doesn't mean we should betray our country, Lena argued. Is helping German prisoners get better care really betrayal? Elsa asked softly. The argument went on late, touching on big questions about loyalty, survival, and right and wrong in tough times. The next morning, Elsa decided, Lieutenant Brooks, I'll take the job, but with one condition. What's that? I want it in writing that my role is only about prisoner care, not spying or propaganda. Brooks smiled and handed her a typed paper already prepared. This contract says your duties are only for prisoner support and translating for camp business. Elsa's new job showed her things about camp operations that amazed her. American records were detailed. Every prisoner's health needs, food preferences, letter rights, and activities were carefully tracked and checked often. We have monthly Red Cross visits, Brooks explained in Elsa's first week as translator. Everything about prisoner treatment must meet global standards. What happens if rules are broken? Immediate fixes and reports. Camp leaders who break Geneva Convention rules face serious punishment and lose their jobs. As Elsa translated guides for new German prisoners, she saw their shock at the camp's conditions. Clean buildings, enough food, kind treatment, fun activities, and medical care better than what many German soldiers got in their own army. Lieutenant, she asked Brooks in a quiet moment, why do Americans treat prisoners so well? Most armies see captives as a problem to handle with as little as possible. Brooks thought carefully, because we believe how we treat our enemies shows who we are. If we act cruel to prisoners, we become what we're fighting against. That evening, Elsa wrote her first letter home since capture, using her new letter privileges. But as she tried to describe Camp Jackson, she faced a big problem. How could she tell her family that the American barbarians were treating German prisoners with more respect and care than the German government had given its own people in the war's desperate final months? The truth was clear, but it challenged everything she'd been taught. 3 months into her captivity, Elsa faced her biggest test when the camp's Red Cross inspection revealed something that broke her last trust in Nazi claims about American cruelty. Captain Schmidt, can you help me translate during today's inspection? Asked Dr. Clara Evans, the Red Cross official who checked prisoner conditions each month. As they toured the camp, Dr. Evans carefully noted every detail of prisoner treatment: medical clinic, dining hall, recreation areas, sleeping quarters, and work programs. What do you see about prisoner health and morale? Dr. Evans asked Elsa as they spoke with German POWs. They look healthy, well-fed, and not content exactly, but they show no signs of cruelty or abuse. And how does this compare to conditions in German military service? Elsa hesitated, afraid to answer truthfully. In the war's final months, German soldiers often faced food shortages, poor medical care, and bad living conditions due to lack of supplies. Dr. Clara Evans took detailed notes while talking to German prisoners, asking about medical treatment, food quality, activities, and any complaints about American behavior. Corporal Hauser, Dr. Evans asked through Elsa's translation, have you faced any violations of Geneva Convention rules? The opposite, Hauser answered firmly. When I had a lung infection, I got better medical care here than in the German army. The doctors treated me like they would an American soldier. Every prisoner interviewed said the same. No reports of cruelty, bad food, medical neglect, or mistreatment. Instead, they described professional, respectful treatment that went beyond Geneva Convention standards. But the real surprise came when Dr. Evans shared her inspection results with camp leaders in Elsa's presence. Camp Jackson gets the highest rating for prisoner treatment. Dr. Evans told Lieutenant Colonel Bennett, the camp commander, your facilities and rules go beyond Geneva Convention standards in every way. Thank you, Dr. Evans. We work hard to keep those standards. I have one concern, though. Some prisoners feel guilty about getting better treatment here than they did as German soldiers. This causes mental stress that might need counseling. Lieutenant Colonel Bennett nodded gravely. We've seen this. Many German prisoners struggle with realizing their own government gave them worse conditions than we give enemy captives. After Dr. Evans left, Elsa was alone with Lieutenant Brooks, wrestling with thoughts she couldn't ignore. Lieutenant Brooks, can I ask something personal? Of course. Why do Americans give such good care to enemy prisoners when you could easily justify being harsh? Brooks thought carefully. Because our moral standards don't depend on how our enemies act. If we become cruel because of Nazi brutality, we'd be just like them. That evening, Elsa sat in her private room, a perk from her administrative work, writing a letter she might never send. How could she tell her family that American prison camps gave German prisoners better conditions than German citizens had during the war's last years? Lena, she confided during evening free time, I'm starting to see something awful. What? The Americans aren't treating us well to trick us or get information. They're doing it because that's who they are. Their respect for human dignity isn't fake. It's real. Lena was quiet for a long moment. And what does that say about the leaders we followed? Elsa had no answer, but the question stayed with her as she realized the German cause she believed in was built on lies. The truth was clear, but accepting it meant admitting she'd fought for the wrong side in a war between right and wrong. Subscribe to follow this incredible journey to its powerful end, and see how these German prisoners faced the life-changing truth that their enemies were more humane than their own leaders. 6 months after her capture, Elsa stood in the camp's communication center, translating the most heartbreaking news she'd ever heard. American radio reports described the liberation of Nazi concentration camps, with details too terrible to grasp. Captain Schmidt, Lieutenant Brooks said softly, we're getting reports about German camps for civilian prisoners. The details are upsetting. We want German POWs to hear this from fellow Germans, not American sources. Elsa's hands shook as she read the reports. Bergen-Belsen, Dachau, Buchenwald, names that would haunt history. Places where her government had committed horrors beyond understanding. This can't be true, she whispered. These numbers, mass murder like this, it's impossible. I'm afraid it's very real, Brooks said gently. Allied forces are documenting everything. The evidence is clear. That evening, Elsa faced the hardest task of her life, translating these reports for her fellow German prisoners. The main hall went silent as she read about systematic killings, medical experiments, and murder on a massive scale by the regime they'd served. 6 million Jews, she read, her voice cracking, plus millions of other civilians, Poles, Russians, disabled people, political prisoners, all killed by German forces while we thought we were fighting a just war. The German prisoners' reactions were instant and crushing. Some refused to believe the reports, calling them American lies. Others cried openly, realizing why American soldiers had shown such kindness and restraint toward German captives. How could we not have known? Asked Lena, tears rolling down her face. Corporal Hauser, always practical, gave the painful answer. We didn't know because we chose not to know. The clues were there. People vanishing. Trains heading to camps we never questioned. Rules we followed without thinking. In the days after, American camp leaders made a bold move. They arranged for German prisoners to watch film footage from liberated concentration camps, believing facing the truth was key for Germany's future. Elsa watched in horror as American cameras showed the reality of Nazi crimes. Skeletal survivors, mass graves, gas chambers built for mass murder, medical rooms where humans were used for experiments. Now you see, Lieutenant Brooks said after the screening, why American forces have worked so hard to treat German prisoners by Geneva Convention rules. We wanted to show that civilization and cruelty are choices, not fate. That night, Elsa wrote letters she'd been unable to write for months, admitting she'd fought for a regime that stood for pure evil, while her captors had kept their humanity, even toward enemies who'd lost theirs. The difference between American prison camps and German concentration camps wasn't just about rules. It was about valuing human worth and dignity. 1 year after her capture, as Germany's surrender became official, Elsa stood in the camp's assembly hall, listening to Lieutenant Colonel Bennett address the German prisoners for the last time before they'd return home. Ladies and gentlemen, your war is over. Many of you will go back to Germany to rebuild your country. Others may stay in America to start new lives. Either way, you take with you the experience of what fair treatment looks like, even between former enemies. Elsa thought about the change she'd seen in herself and her fellow prisoners. Women who arrived expecting cruelty had instead received respect, medical care, education, and a chance to keep their dignity in captivity. Captain Schmidt, Colonel Bennett said, would you share your thoughts with your fellow prisoners about what you've experienced here? Elsa stood, her voice calm despite her feelings. A year ago, we arrived expecting to be treated badly by cruel Americans. Instead, we found that our captors held higher standards of kindness than our own leaders showed to millions of innocent people. She paused, looking at the German women who'd shared this journey. We learned that hot baths, clean towels, enough food, and fair treatment aren't extras. They're basic human rights that good societies give even to their enemies. What will you tell people back in Germany? Asked Sergeant Lena Braun. I'll tell them the truth, that American soldiers showed it's possible to win a war without losing your humanity. That treating prisoners with respect makes you stronger, not weaker. That the difference between good and evil is how you treat those who can't protect themselves. Dr. Clara Evans, on her final Red Cross inspection, approached Elsa with an important paper. Captain, this is our full report on Camp Jackson. Would you help translate it into German for sharing in occupied Germany? The report detailed every part of prisoner treatment over the past year: medical care stats, education programs, activities, letter records, and most importantly, 0 cases of prisoner abuse or Geneva Convention violations. Why share this with Germans? Elsa asked. Because Germany needs to see that strength and victory don't need cruelty. Your people must know it's possible to build a society based on respect, not control. As ships prepared to take prisoners home, Elsa packed her few belongings. Letters from American soldiers' families who'd connected with German prisoners through letter programs, photos from camp activities, and certificates from courses she'd completed. Lena came to her with tears in her eyes. Elsa, how do we explain this when we get home? How do we tell Germans that American prison camps gave us better conditions than our own army did? We tell the truth, Elsa answered strongly. We tell them we met Americans who showed that kindness isn't weakness, it's strength. That treating enemies with respect makes you stronger, not weaker. As the ship carrying German prisoners left New York Harbor, Elsa stood at the rail, watching the Statue of Liberty fade away. She was heading back to a broken homeland, but she carried something precious. Proof that even in war's darkest times, some people choose to stay human. The hot baths, clean towels, and fair treatment she'd received as a prisoner would always remind her that civilization and cruelty are choices, not fate. In American prison camps, German women learned that their enemies had the humanity their own leaders had lost. It was a lesson that could help rebuild not just Germany, but the hope for a kinder world.